Hi, y'all. Meteorologist Andy Hill and Mr. Midas Kitty here at the forecasting desk. Let's talk weather. Right now, several weather events are occurring across the scope of North America that you're going to want to pay attention to. Starting today, we've got elevated threats of severe weather across the southern U.S., potential snowfall ranging from Amarillo, Texas, all the way up to Thunder Bay, Ontario. This is all happening because of the last atmospheric river that just went through California. That unsettled weather is finishing its trek across the Rocky Mountains and will begin its sweep across the rest of the United States in a true springtime classic setup. So for a lot of us, including the West Coast, once this rain and snow is done, it'll be a nice, sunny, chilly weekend. However, it's spring, y'all. It's not going to stay that way because the atmosphere is always trying to get itself back into balance. There's going to be another nationwide storm coming next week. Before we get to that, though, I'm going to brief y'all in depth on the next couple of days. Let's pivot to our severe weather threat expected today with an enhanced risk, or a 3 out of 5, issued by the Storm Prediction Center, issued primarily for northeastern Texas, southeastern Oklahoma, into the Texarkana region right in this area. Now let's take a look at where these storms are showing up. The storms in question for our enhanced risk in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex in particular are going to initiate in late afternoon and then move southeast with time into the evening hours, eventually being out of your hair in Dallas-Fort Worth by around 10 to 11 p.m. local time. But while they are going through, they're going to bring some nasty hail with large supercellular structures. We can see that modeled here around the Waco area. The costliest case here, or the worst case scenario of this day, is the Dallas-Fort Worth Metro getting hammered by a large hailstorm causing lots of property damage. And that's why the Storm Prediction Center has the greatest area of severe hail risk outlined for the Dallas-Fort Worth Metro area just south to Waco, Texas, and north across the Oklahoma border. Then, after sunset, the big old cold front comes rushing in there into the overnight hours as our severe threat wanes. However, we still do have a slight risk extending all the way from San Antonio through Houston, all the way up to areas just northwest of Alexandria, Louisiana. This front will also knock right into any supercells that developed on the dry line. Dry lines create rising air while moving to the east during the day. And then after sunset, they retrograde to the west. Where these supercells merge with this line of storms is going to pose an enhanced area of damaging wind threat. Particularly, I'm concerned with the area around Tyler, Texas, and areas just south and perhaps just to the north, including Sulphur Springs, Mount Pleasant, and Texarkana. This happens because supercells merging with a line of storms like this often leads to bows in the line, or bow echoes, literally where the winds are fastest and pushing the rain in that part of the storm out ahead of the rest of it. Like I mentioned, that severe wind threat is going to happen further east primarily because that's when the supercells are going to merge with this oncoming cold front of storms. Now, not to be discounted is the tornado threat with these storms. Currently, that threat is reduced somewhat in comparison to the elevated level of hail and wind put out by the Storm Prediction Center. And that's due to something a little complex that we're looking at in this map right here. This is a map of photographs, or literally the change in wind direction and speed with height in the atmosphere. The most important thing to pay attention to in this map that I want to point out is this little divot here. The meteorological jargon for this is veer back. It usually means that any tornado that does form is not going to be long-lived. It's going to be choked off. And so the Storm Prediction Center has a lower tornado risk in part due to this. Now here's a little bit of whiplash. Snow and fire in the same place? There's actually a small area of an elevated fire risk today from the Storm Prediction Center for this area in the Big Bend of Texas. The cold front sweeping through today is going to feature a lot of gusty winds and blowing dust, especially here in the high plains. And as we go through the weekend, some of this same area in the Big Bend of Texas actually has a chance to see a good spit of snow. Amounts up to 2 to 4 inches through today into early tomorrow are possible in this area of gray and light blues here through Nebraska, along the I-70 corridor and into Minnesota, the Twin Cities, and up towards Duluth. Winter storm warnings in Nebraska include the threat of blowing snow, even though there's only going to be a little bit of accumulation in these areas, meaning that driving along Interstate 80 in central Nebraska will prove to be dangerous tomorrow. Winter storm warnings are also being issued up here for Duluth and into the upper peninsula of Michigan. There's chances of up to 8 inches of snow in these areas as this system moves through and exits on Friday. The same will be true in southwest Ontario and areas along Lake Superior to the north here, as over a foot of snow is possible for our friends in Thunder Bay and to the east here as we go through the rest of Friday. Here's a graph from my friends at the Weather Prediction Center that shows us through the weekend these light snow flurries and even spots of heavy snow are going to be possible throughout Minnesota all the way east to New England as this low pressure system departs to the east. So we can see on Saturday the vast extent of these snow flurries that are possible as the system departs. At the same time, we've got a slight risk of severe weather focused down here on the Gulf Coast. This is a slight risk, or a 2 out of 5 for Friday in these areas, and that's going to be primarily for this line of storms that passes through, posing primarily a damaging wind threat or locally gusty winds. So this means if you have a minute and you're in a safe place, you could take a storm shelfie here in New Orleans, Gulfport, Mississippi, and even Mobile and Pensacola. The slight risk in particular is concentrated along the coast here because this cold front is moving so quickly that there isn't time for instability stemming from Gulf waters to really make it that far inland as this cold front comes crashing through. And on Friday, up here in the Midwest, winds are really going to stay gusty even behind the front as it passes through. Just look at how you can see the cold front showing up all the way from Texas to the Great Lakes here on the wind gust map. And of course, with that cold front comes the wind chills that you're really going to feel. Friday morning, after this front has passed through these areas, Indianapolis is going to be at 23°F wind chill, Chicago at 16°F, and for me over here in the Twin Cities metro region, we're going to be below 0 in our wind chill values. Then if we come all the way down here to Texas, we can see a large span of freezing temperatures across much of Oklahoma, even as far down as Austin, Texas, possible Friday morning. So that cold front is going to continue to pass east and eventually bring these chilly temperatures to the New England area as well on Saturday morning. But the cold air is going to stay in place for everyone, unfortunately, for a while until our next storm comes in to shake things up. Unfortunately for the Pacific coast, it's going to be another doozy. The Climate Prediction Center has issued a high confidence and above average rainfall for the west coast here, especially for Monday and Tuesday next week. Along with that, we've got below average temperatures issued for the same area due to a bunch of rain-cooled air that's expected. The Weather Prediction Center also has an outline risk here for Tuesday the 21st. The dark green is heavy rain, and this dark blue is heavy snow. Now, there was also a high risk for heavy snow in the same area from the Climate Prediction Center a few days ago. That means that this signal hasn't gone away. So let's take a look at where it's coming from and where it's going to go. Here's the integrated water vapor transport. We've got this low pressure system spinning up here in the Gulf of Alaska. As the weekend goes on, that's going to spin down here and eventually reach the western U.S. coast. And once we reach Tuesday, all of this moisture streaming in from the central Pacific and also up here in the northern Pacific is going to combine and slam into the California coast. Then, this unsettled weather is going to shift east from California into the Intermountain West, where we have some high confidence risks for heavy snow, including areas just near Salt Lake City and across much of central Utah, as well as much of the central Rocky Mountains here in Colorado. Now, we're a little too far to talk about super specific regions here, but we have large areas with potential risks for heavy rainfall here for the southeastern states. Heavy snow up here in the upper Midwest into the Canadian prairies and also southern Ontario, and also a huge area of some windy conditions likely possible with this next storm system as it moves through from March 23rd to 25th. So where do these storms go after they leave North America? Well, quite often they travel across the northern Atlantic Ocean at this time of year and eventually make their way into Europe. So you can see our storm here that's exiting this weekend right here in the northeast is actually going to travel quite some distance across the northern Atlantic Ocean, intensify at times, and eventually combine with a couple of other lows and bang, make it over to Europe. Through this afternoon, parts of the United Kingdom are actually under a yellow warning for rain and snow in the higher elevations, making travel a bit impacted. And more warnings are actually likely to be issued next week. That same storm system that's leaving the US this weekend is going to track east and eventually reach Ireland and the United Kingdom around this Monday evening. From Monday through Thursday, much of Ireland, the UK, and Western Europe is going to be inundated with this moisture streaming across the North Atlantic Ocean. Widespread areas of 25 millimeters or about an inch of rain are expected across this time in inland UK and on the coastal regions of Ireland, Wales, and also Scotland, all the way down to western France. We could see up to 75 to 100 millimeters in localized areas, which is 3 to 4 inches for these guys. Thank you all for watching this video. Make sure you're staying warm and cozy through the week. I also heard your feedback from last video. It's the Berkshire Mountains. I got it. Let me know if I flunked anything this time around too. I'm going to learn something new from y'all every video. Mr. Midas Kitty.